Metroid Other M has received mixed reviews. The game has been criticized for a lot of things, including its depiction of Samus, its story in general, the game's linear nature in comparison to other games in the series, and even its control scheme. Personally, I think the gameplay and controls are the strongest part of the game. The controls are efficient enough, but the overall feeling of the way Samus moves in combat is great. Even with all of its flaws, some of which I believe have been exaggerated, I think the game is a solid entry into the series that should be given credit for its creativity and the new directions it explores. However, I do have some issues with the controls. First, since the time I learned about the control scheme, I've thought that they should have included an alternate control method using the Wii Remote and Nunchuck. Playing the game just reinforced this. It's clear that the developers wanted this to feel somewhat like a 2D Metroid game, but Other M is never 2D. Even when the view puts Samus in a narrow hallway running horizontally, the player is still able to control Samus to go in any direction possible within the confines of the space. The 3D control method would have been better suited to the analog stick. The other major complaint I have is the first-person element to the game. Controlling Samus feels great in third person, but when I go into first person, all of a sudden I have to admit that there is a little bit of truth to the claims made by some that the controls feel clunky. Other M is a 3D action game, and that's where the attention went. The controls for first person are weak, especially after coming off of playing Metroid Prime 3, a game that's first-person controls were nearly perfect. It might have been fine if it was included as an option just to allow players to look around and investigate occasionally, but the game forces it upon you. Because of the chosen control scheme and the developers designing the game to be played in third person, Samus can't move in first person. When you're alone in a room and have to switch to first person to use your missile and open a door, it's not bad. When you're in a fight and have only a brief opening once your enemy stops attacking you to switch to first person, lock on with your missile, and shoot, it becomes a problem. It's also very frustrating when it forces you into first person to look for something on the screen to scan. There are times when I just got seriously ticked off because I couldn't find whatever it was that it wanted me to look for. I honestly think that the first person mode as a whole was a bad decision. It doesn't really add much to the game, and I think the only reason that it was included was to associate itself with the highly successful and critically acclaimed Prime trilogy. The Prime games have been the only console Metroid games for a long time, so there are many people who define Metroid through that first-person experience. Other M's third-person action style is a major departure, so I think they were hoping people would say, "Ooh, it still has first-person, so it's kinda like Prime," then discover how much they like the third-person gameplay. In concept, a game that has both good third-person and first-person elements seems like a great idea, but in execution, Other M is a fun third-person game with mediocre first-person gameplay shoehorned in. Even though I'd prefer to have the first-person element removed, that doesn't mean the game has to use the same camera and gameplay style the whole time. In fact, Other M already features another gameplay style that is mostly forgotten when people talk about the game. At certain points the game forces players to go into an over-the-shoulder point of view in order to take in the scene more slowly. These points feel more like Samus is exploring her environment. In my opinion, these sections are among the game's most atmospheric and graphically impressive. The Samus character model looks impressive from this angle, and maybe they spent more time on the sections that use this angle, but the environments look especially good at these times too. Players just walk around as Samus in these sections, but imagine if this was used for more. Looking at screenshots, it's easy to make comparisons to games like Resident Evil 4 and Dead Space. In fact, Resident Evil 4 was ported to the Wii, and the controls are great. Imagine if players could switch between Other M's great action controls and an equally great Resident Evil-like shooting control scheme. If they wanted to keep things the way they are and not let players shoot missiles from combat mode, this over-the-shoulder shooting mode would be a much better alternative in the middle of a fight because it provides a smoother transition and, more importantly, it would allow Samus to move. This mode would completely get rid of the need for first person. Every time Samus needs to look around and investigate, she can explore the world from this over-the-shoulder view. The game can keep the parts in which you are forced to slowly walk around from this point of view, while adding more abilities, including the ability to run if the player chooses to go into this mode. As for the sections in which Samus has to find a specific point on the screen, just take them out completely. It would be important to make both control modes feel necessary and balance their usage. Level design would play a large role in making both of these aspects feel important. The action mode would be used more for combat and platforming. Bigger rooms would just naturally suggest that the player go into this mode to get a feel for the whole area. Smaller corridors would lead the player more to the shooting mode to see what's going on in the room. This mode helps the player explore the area and find secrets. Players will be able to see certain details from this point of view that aren't visible otherwise. To me, there are two very important elements to Metroid: action and exploration. These two different gameplay modes would allow the game to get the best out of both the series' key elements. In conclusion, I'd love to see another game with action gameplay like Other M that is able to better capture the exploration element of the series through improved level design and an over-the-shoulder mode to take in the environment. That's all for now. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe and tune in next time.